We're super excited to have you guys here to talk about AI and benefits, and I'm going to pass it on to Vlad and Kate to run the webinar.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Vlad Geister. I'm co-founder and CEO of Airbo, and here we have Kate.
Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm co-founder and COO of Airbo.
It's kind of an exciting day for us to be talking about this because we find ourselves in the middle of some really interesting technology developments, industry developments, how we sort of position ourselves in the benefits ecosystem, in the HR ecosystem, is we make benefits easier to navigate. So the idea has been to like aggregate a lot of things and make it easier for employees to get around it. And that's put us somewhat accidentally in the middle of a lot of these AI things. And it's given us a really fun snapshot. And it gives us a snapshot, particularly because we work with a lot of organizations, many of them forward-leaning. And so it's always fun to like think about the future, but it's extra fascinating to see it unfolding in front of you. So what we're going to be doing today is sharing what we've learned and what we're doing in the AI space. And so we'll talk about how AI impacts benefits in HR. We are developing and deploying a couple of things that are in the space, 2 tools that really many people see for the first time today, but we've been low-key showing it to some of you. So some of you on the phone here may have seen it before. And then as Evelyn said, we are at heart big gamification fans. And so we are not above bribery. And we're doing a raffle for anyone who submits a question. So if you submit at least a question, it can be about mitochondria, but I don't recommend it. I recommend AI. You'll be entered for a raffle for, I think, a $50 gift card to Amazon.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to start off with a quick poll. What's your experience with with AI so far? And we have decided to, Evelyn's creativity is at play here. Got options and movies to represent our feelings about this. I think the first question is really interesting because it's coming in about neck and neck. You know, if you're here, you're inherently taking AI seriously, and about half of you have used AI in your job so far, about 53%. Oh, it's jumping around still. All right.
Pretty even split though, really interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna end the poll so people can see it.
I think did it end at 50-50 exactly?
50-50 exactly.
Couldn't have made that up.
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
I actually think this is a bit of a more forward-leaning group that we've got here on this webinar than today, because usually we see a little less. So half of you have used it, half of you haven't. We find that generally most people haven't yet, so it's really cool that many of you have. And as far as the movie that best represents how you feel about AI, this is like I think like really encouraging. Star Wars: An Epic Adventure comes in second, and The Incredibles comes in first. So I think a lot of like overall positivity here about its potential. The Matrix and Terminator coming in very, 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 very distant third and fourth. So we like that. So for those of you that haven't seen AI yet, we're actually going to start off by doing a live demo here. And Kate is going to take us through exactly how AI works in the benefit space.
Cool. So Vlad, I'm going to steal the screen from you.
It's all yours. I won't fight you.
Thank you. Cool. So this is the Airbo AI that we're working on developing right now. And just to set the scene, just imagine, you're an employee and you're asking it questions. And so I'm just going to start by asking it a pretty basic question, which is what is an HSA? So I just type my question in, and I'm going to click enter. And basically what it's doing is it's going to pull a response in within seconds and explain to me what the HSA is. And so I actually now want to go a little bit further and see does my company have an HSA? And I'm going to enter that in. It's going to start searching the company's documents, and it's going to pull a response through. And so in this case, it's saying that yes, it does have an HSA through a specific plan. I think the really cool thing that we're seeing here is it's giving information, and then it's actually asking a prompt that an employee might not otherwise know to ask about, okay, how can I learn a little bit more about this benefit? And so it's giving some information. So it's giving me a good chunk that I can understand. And then it's giving me a prompt, which that's usually, I think, where a breakdown for sometimes employees happen, or excuse me, for sometimes employees is they don't know what else to ask about these benefits. And so I'm just going to do a simple, yes, please, I'd like more information. And it is going to, again, just pull some knowledge in. And so that's a really quick demo of how AI works. So essentially what we're doing is we're just asking it questions. It's pulling in information. I think pretty cool that somebody can get this information in a matter of, I think that took a minute and a half to go through, versus, which we're going to get into this in a little while, how long the alternative experience is for someone to get the same exact information.
Thanks, Kate.
Well, so yeah, of course, Vlad, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, we'll see how good I am at flipping screens quickly. You were pretty good at it. All right.
I had the AI tool to help me.
All right, how's that? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it again.
All right, I'm good at it. Excellent to know. We wanted to start off with a live demo of it because I think it's really important to make the point that we've had a few fads come our way in the last few years. Couple that come to mind is cryptocurrency, which, though, if you're a Bitcoin owner, it does seem to be popping right now. The blockchain really hasn't changed, too much in our daily lives yet. We had the whole virtual reality thing, augmented reality come out, Facebook, Apple getting into it. Hasn't changed a lot of our daily experience yet.
Yeah.
AI is not that. AI is not that. It is actually here already. It's moving at a very, very fast pace. And I would say that, essentially the world seems to be breaking up into two primary camps. You're either somebody who is implementing AI, which if you're on this call, there's a good chance that you fall into that camp. So good on you. Or there is a good chance that part of what you do will be replaced or augmented by AI. So you're either in the driver's seat or you're going to be on the receiving end, but nobody will really escape it. I think what's really neat is that HR fundamentally understands that. According to Gardner, this was back in 2023. I think it was Q4. So we've had, almost another quarter full of developments in the AI space. 76% of HR leaders believe that AI is a must-adopt tool or technology for them to be just on par with what is happening in the market. And we're actually seeing that, and Kate, you talk to more of these organizations than I think I do, even in some sense, but I know that there was an organization that we talked to recently where there's just like a company-wide directive top down that was like everyone's got to adopt it in some way.
Yep. And they have a 2-year plan for it. So essentially, it's not only benefits that need to adopt it, it's every part of the organization. So IT and others. And they're They're working with IT to roll it out. Over 2 years, they put together a task force to do so. So it's really something that this specific group was like, yep, we're implementing this because we see that like this is the future.
Yeah. And so there's generally this sort of like either it's organization-wide movement where it's being driven by the business leadership. Plenty of times we're seeing it being driven inside HR and inside benefits because the opportunities are kind of so clear in terms of what it can do. And I think this is where I want to voice a note of caution, having gone through a few of these cycles from social media to gamification to mobile to a couple of the other things that I mentioned. I'm getting old. It's kind of weird.
we've been in this space for a minute.
And I want to call this up because I think it's a good piece of data from Gartner, where HR leaders were asked, what's the primary goal that you see AI really shifting, making a big impact on? And the number one response was improve efficiency. Number two response was improve employee experience. And number three was reduce costs. Improve efficiency is just a code word for reduce costs. So, in a lot of ways, two of the three top responses are basically saying the same thing, which is like, we see an opportunity to reduce costs. I'm calling this out because the second most popular response was improve employee experience. And when we talk to HR leaders, and particularly benefit leaders and field staff, the ones who are in day-to-day, they, I think, are most excited about the opportunity to fulfill what they see as their mission. And if we're in the benefit space, generally speaking, you want to improve employees' lives. You just do. That's why you do what you do. It's actually a mission-oriented business that's not widely, admitted to. But generally speaking, when we're talking about stuff, we're almost thinking about how to justify the business case, not necessarily the business case first. The business that HR is actually in is minimizing expenses. It isn't overhead. I don't think I've talked to one business leader behind the scenes that actually likes the fact that HR costs money. Like, everybody wants it to cost less. But we'll talk a big game. We'll talk a big game about improving the employee experience. Talk a big game about improving employee well-being. And it's easy to fall in love with that and get very far with it. But at the end of the day, the most successful way to improve people's lives is to actually think about, I think, the business case for AI first. And generally speaking, the business case for AI is that it can help really drive down expenses from service delivery within HR. And so when we're having these conversations and thinking about how to launch this stuff, I would really encourage leading with the business side of the benefits business. And by building that business case first, it's going to create space to execute the mission, because AI costs money. It's not going to just show up for free, because literally the computing power behind HR is actually, AI is pretty expensive. Yeah, I don't know, Kate, I'm curious like how your conversations have gone.
Yeah, so I've talked to a handful of groups about this. So kind of some of these pre-ones that we've shown it to a little bit before this call. And a lot of it is about improving efficiency. And so like, they're like, when they see that demo, they're like, oh my God, I can answer a question in a minute versus the 15 minutes it takes me right now to get a question answered, because I have to go hunt for the response. Potentially I have to draft up a response, make sure it all looks good, and then send it off. And so you can see like eyes light up, essentially. I always say the starry-eyed emoji, because they can see how much time it would take off of their day and like answering questions. And like we know that HR is always like in front of employees answering questions and always there for support. But at the same time, there's always like that work that you all have to do on the side. And so really, I think like this is going to be able to like open up space for that and minimize the like expense of like how often you're having to like spend time putting together responses for employees. So that's really like where I've seen it so far in the combo. And again, like that starry-eyed emoji it's been fun to see how it can help on that front.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah.
The starry eye, so there's like a lot of the media around, and by the way, we're seeing the questions roll in, and we're gonna start addressing them, besides how big the waves were in my experience. I appreciate you asking. So we've done quite a lot of thinking on and experimentation on like why is this going to change things so much, basically answering that question. And to some extent, it's like, yes, it's really cool that AI can generate images. It's really cool that AI can write, right? And there's a lot of those things that are very real things, and it's very impactful. But the biggest thing that AI is going to change in how our daily life goes is actually how we interact with computers. And this is called the conversational interface. So what you just saw Kate do in the demo earlier, type in some words and then it go in and actually answer the question. That is a conversational interface. And this is going to fundamentally change how humans interact with technology, because we no longer have to do a bunch of things that we used to have to do. And I'll give you a really simple example. We asked the Google
The Google
question of like, what is a medical deductible? And we've all used Google. You get a very, very long list of answers on a page. It can be kind of hard to tell where to go to actually get the real answer. And Google is widely considered the simplest search experience on the internet. Like this is the best. This is the best that we could do up until this point. ChatGPT, same question. What is a medical deductible? ChatGPT is going to answer very specifically right away. There's no links to go into. There's no multiple sites to browse. There's no process of having to decide what to trust, what to not trust. So this cuts out a lot of things, right? I no longer have to go and look at each website. I no longer have to go and navigate each website. ChatGPT is doing all that work for me. So this idea of the conversational interface moving from the left world to the right world here on the screen, it really changes how the HR function overall works. And I actually think it's going to really change how benefits works too.
Yeah. And I mean, Vlad, also potentially employees understanding, or probably employees understanding of benefits, because the cognitive overload on like having to search and find the answer and then like process and figure it out versus you just getting it, I think is completely different for the person that's like using these two versions. And just like that simple fact for an employee, I think will change a lot of things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can actually go a little more into that, just to set the context. Like a lot of up until maybe the last 25 years, I sort of group into the filing cabinet era of HR. Like a lot of things were paper. And so we were doing record keeping, we were doing transactions, and we were doing employee support manually via humans, right? We're literally submitting forms into HR, and kind of crazy. There's still organizations that are in the filing cabinet era today that'll probably leapfrog, but it's still happening to some extent, right? So filing cabinet era is everything, everybody doing everything pretty much manually and via paper.
I remember that from my HR days. Like I remember searching for files in the filing cabinet. Like I have such a clear picture of it.
Wild.
Yeah.
We went to the Web 2.0 era, and you can kind of say like the last 20, 25 years was the Web 2.0 era. And the big thing there was like we took the stuff that was in paper and we put it into databases. And this was HRIS, this was Ben admin systems. moving it into databases online made the transaction record keeping a lot easier to do. Transactions became cheaper and faster to do, right? You can actually just edit fields instead of having to rewrite a whole form. And at least when I was in consulting, there was this promise that employee and manager self-service, this idea that people could go in and directly interact with these databases via like a graphical interface, that it was going to suddenly lead to a lot of efficiency in the HR function. A lot of the business cases that were built to implement HRIS came with workforce reductions in HR. And what actually happened is that these graphical interfaces were actually too confusing for most people, because most people are going to these systems as an employer or manager really like once in a while. And in benefits particularly, it's rare, right? Like once a year, maybe you go into a ben admin. Like I'm
Maybe a
also
couple
grouping
times,
in
maybe a couple times a year.
maybe
Yeah.
a couple times a year.
Yeah. A couple times a
Microsite,
year. Yeah.
like same thing, right? It's pretty rare to go. And so in many ways, employee support, that third function was actually continued to be done by humans instead of shifting that work onto employees and managers. And so HR in many cases kind of became glorified tech support, helping employees not only push the buttons, but also think through the questions they were even asking. And then we also outsourced a bunch of stuff, right? We moved things overseas. And so we're still left with this world that, Kate, you were just sort of alluding to. And maybe you could actually talk to this, because I think you see more of this day to day.
Yeah. I mean, so if you look at this graphic, this is how employees really experience benefits today, whether that's the tech platforms they have to use, whether that's the actual benefit, or like just because like they have different tech platforms they have to go to for different actions. They have apps they have to download for like to get telemedicine. They need to know how the high deductible plan is intertwined with the health savings account. And so it's super, super complex. And an employee really has to like go and find the information right now. And yeah, this exactly. Thank you. So like right now, maybe I wanted to ask, does my company have an HSA? I might search the OE guide. I might see that it does, but I like might not understand it. So then I go to the microsite to look and see if I have more information. And then I might go to the Ben admin to be like, am I enrolled? I actually don't even know if I am enrolled in this because I have a high deductible health plan. And then I might get redirected to the vendor site because I never set up my account, even though I was enrolled in this plan. And then I'm confused because I don't know how to update my contributions. So I go to the call center and then I end up just talking to the manager or the benefits team because I'm just like, I don't even know how to take advantage of this. I had to go through so many places and it was so complex. And I still am like confused about how a health savings account works and how it like actually benefits me. And that's really like how people experience a lot of benefits today.
Yeah, and I think we still see this in the numbers. This
Yeah.
is some Kaiser data on some pretty basic. This is like a really easy quiz that you could take online about insurance terms, just overall concepts. And I thought this was a really cool breakdown, because what we see is that like 52% of people got 7 to 10 of the questions right, which if you take this thing, I think I got 9 out of 10 right.
I
Should have been
should go
10 out of
take
10.
it. I haven't taken it.
Kind
I
of
know.
embarrassing. But that's pretty good. That means you kind of know your stuff. I think
Yeah.
what I get most worried about is these 28% that get 0 to 4, which means you're really lost.
Yeah.
And the 20% that get 5 to 6 because you're missing an important chunk of what you need to know. And so today, I hate to say this, but I think as a whole, the industry has just simply failed at educating people, and getting them to be confident. And I don't necessarily think it's our fault, in that like just the technology just hasn't been there. And providing a human for every person to go and help them every day whenever they need it is way too expensive, as much as we want to do it. And so this is where the conversational interface is really fascinating, because AI solves a lot of these issues. In order to answer like ask a question, I actually need to know that my problem connects to a benefit, right? In our current world, like you have to go and look up that benefit. I need to know that my problem connects to a benefit. And a really common example we use is EAP, everything that EAP includes.
Yep.
If I'm having a mental health challenge, I'm probably not going to think necessarily to go look at the EAP because I don't really know what those initials even stand for.
Mhm.
I then need to know that benefit actually exists, not only that my problem connects to it, but that it's like a thing that I have access to and that I'm paying for it. And then I need to know how to access it, which is that crazy chart that Kate showed earlier. With conversational AI, that really kind of just goes away. Kate, maybe you can like just walk us through this example.
Yeah. So again, just imagine like you're an employee, you have access to Airbo AI, and you just text, in this case, I'm feeling burnt out. What should I do? So at this point, like I have a problem, but again, like I don't know if I have a benefit that'll help me. And so it replied back that you could utilize the EAP, and it gave a contact information for this company's specific EAP. And then the employee asked, is it free? And so then it replied back again saying that it was no cost when they use a participating provider. And then even further, they were able to ask, okay, so like how much does a doctor's visit cost? And again, it was able to read the documents from this specific company and provide that $65 visit. And so it was really like going from, I'm burnt out, what do I do? Like, I need some help, to, okay, I can go to a primary care physician for $65 to get some support. And I also have the EAP available to me. So I was able to get an employee there in probably a matter of about a minute, depending on, how quickly the employee went through it.
I think it's also really wild to think how much of that crazy ecosystem that we showed earlier sort of becomes irrelevant. Like, do I really need to go to a microsite at that point? Do I need to go and visit my benefits guide at that point? Do I need to go and contact someone in HR? No. Do I need to ask my friend that seems to know everything, but sometimes gets things wrong? No. So we're really talking about like a reshuffle of how the whole ecosystem is set up, and I think that's really fun and really wild. So
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, go ahead. This is perfect segue. Go for it.
This brings us to the unlocking of the AI era, which is why we're all here on this webinar right now. The AI era is built on the conversational interface, and it makes it really easy for an employee to interact with HRIS, with Ben Admin, understand their benefits, use their benefits directly. And these functions that we see companies really have to having to backfill, like the classic example. Actually, there's a company we were just talking to that was explaining how in theory there's like a call center and like how an employee actually travels through that normally.
Oh yeah, so there's a couple cases, but like one of them is they have to log into their intranet, then they ask a chat question in like just a very basic like chat functionality, and then so that functionality will then say, okay, you need to call this number, which is their call center. They call the call center, they get navigated through if it's like benefits, retirement, or so and so, and then they get an answer, but the answer, it's like it's an offshore call center. And so this particular group has had problems with employees getting the correct answer. And so then it winds up back with the benefits team in a lot of cases because it wasn't answered correctly, or the employee had an issue with the response and like a mishap happened. And so it just sounded like that was a really common scenario where they moved it offshore in, an attempt to like minimize costs of the business, and it's actually kind of circling back and being more of a challenge for improving employees' lives.
Yeah, and so we're entering an era where, generally speaking, humans will not be needed as much to interact with employees on most things because their questions will be answered faster. And the really wild version of this that I try to imagine is it's almost like each of us is going to have our own personal like assistant that travels with us and is there to answer questions about how to help us live longer, how to keep us out of disease states, how to help us navigate the healthcare system. And it's just like economically unfeasible, unimaginable to be able to do that with people. And we're about to unlock this era where that is going to be our new experience, interacting with the benefits ecosystem, with the HR ecosystem, and many, many other things.
Yeah.
Kate, I thought it was really interesting when you started coming back from some of the conversations, and we started seeing all these like improvements that we didn't anticipate, or benefits that we just didn't anticipate.
Yeah. Yeah, like this 24-hour one I've heard multiple times because the groups that I've talked with, a lot of them work, they're like employees, excuse me, their population is first, second, third shift, but they only work, like the HR team or benefits team only works first shift, so Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so if an employee on a third shift asks a question on a weekend, they're not going to get a response until that HR person comes back to the office, or that HR person is checking things on the weekend and is constantly on call and never really gets a break. And so I've heard that a few times because they feel like they have to respond to employees because like they need that response in a quicker time frame. So that one has popped up quite a bit. The other one that's popped up quite a bit, which we weren't anticipating at all, is the psychologically safe space for employees.
This one's really cool. Yeah, this one's wild.
Because I mean, everyone is like, sometimes it's scary to ask some of these questions to a person, or you're just like not comfortable, so you don't do it, and then you don't get the information you need. I mean, I think we've all been to a doctor and like, even though it's a doctor, you not ask the question that you needed because you like felt like stressed about it. And so this actually gives a safe space for employees to ask a question about something that they might not otherwise like feel comfortable asking about. And I have a feeling that this happens more than all of us on the phone would care to like acknowledge that sometimes people are just really scared to ask specific questions.
I didn't realize this was a huge factor until we started talking to normal non-benefit like civilians normal people about this concept that we're building, Airbo AI, and like that was one of the first things that we heard back was like excitement that there was a safer space to ask questions. That was really interesting.
Agreed. I think like the third bullet here, improving accessibility. Yeah, again, it just goes back to like making sure information is accessible. Eventually this is going to be something that's in multiple languages that make it easier for employees to get information. And so it's totally on track for absolutely improving accessibility. And then, yeah, as benefits change, it can update quickly. So you're not going to be going to the microsite and like retyping information out or like re-uploading documents and, making changes to PDFs. It's something that, I think will be a much easier change going forward just for how you get your systems updated. Even if your vendor changes a link or changes their name, you can make that change in a pretty quick instant versus like having to go and change all of your knowledge bases and systems, which that's not trivial. Because I know from talking to a lot of people that takes a long time across the board.
Yeah, I think that one's a big one, and it sort of goes back to like the magic of how this works is really wild, where like we're used to a world where you have to think through every single possible question and provide every single possible answer. And a system's job is essentially to try to like almost do like a Google search type of thing where it tries to figure out what question you're asking and line it up with a possible answer that's been pre-typed.
Yeah.
Nothing in Airbo, AI, and ChatGPT, like these things are not pre-typed in the same sense. It's drawing on like a document or a series of documents that it's what it's learning on and referencing, but how it says it exactly can really be adjusted to the person it's speaking with, much like you would do as a person talking in a call center or someone
Yeah.
that's helping over the phone or via chat from headquarters.
Yeah. Again, just back to that conversational piece. It feels like a conversation.
So this was actually one of the questions that we received in advance of this webinar. And we do have 31 questions, so we're gonna try to Kate,
Hustle through.
yeah, I'm wondering if maybe what we do is finish maybe we finish this, do the live, like the demo, talk about the programs we're launching, and then because a lot of the questions actually have to do
Yeah,
with,
they will be.
our solutions. So let's kind of like do that, and then we'll move to Q&A for the rest of the time here.
Yeah, and I can take, do you want me to take this one fairly quickly? Because it's just something that we've heard a few times.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, we're hearing that groups are building do-it-yourself AI solutions. So like, as we know, some groups are going in there and building it. I think if you're going to do that, like one thing you really want to think about is, again, what's called like prompt engineering. And so you want to make sure that the questions that are being answered are incorrect. And so,
sorry, you mean correct?
I'm sorry, correct. Yes, I looked at incorrect as I said correct. Yeah, you want to make sure that the questions that are being answered are correct. And so you have to take time to train it. And so you need essentially specialized training with your AI tool to ensure that the responses back are correct. And so that does make DIY much riskier because you have to rely on potentially IT, who is not a benefits expert, to do that prompt engineering. And so if you're thinking about AI tools, I would just caution the DIY solution and make sure you're like working with benefits experts in the space to ensure that the tool is trained correctly to answer in the correct way.
Yeah, and this like a good pattern, the way this made sense to me was like I kind of thought through, well, why is there a benefits microsite often carved out from the rest of the infrastructure? And just generally like very similar patterns exist for benefits technology as a whole.
Yeah.
And it is generally because there are specialized concerns that the platform level solutions that IT is going to be adopting, if they haven't already, don't tend to do a very good job with. So you can figure that out in a while, or it's like it's sort of like a given, and I think you could pretty quickly come to the same conclusion when you kind of dive into how it exactly works behind the scenes. And that's actually what led us to build our own stuff, is because we realized that we weren't going to be able to rely on generalized platforms wholly. We're going to have to train our own stuff to be able to do this.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and so go ahead, bud.
No, please. I insist.
Well, I'm going to be doing the demo piece. So if you want to go through this, I'll let you take it.
Oh, that's really nice of you. De-risking it. So we've thought about this in two phases. We think it's important to start using AI inside of HR and inside of benefit functions to actually answer employee questions. So this is a trust building exercise. The people on the phone here are inherently ones that are going to be more early adopter types probably. And this step might even seem superfluous. We don't think it is. Using it in HR, what we mean by that is like when an employee asks a question, put it through an AI model first to generate the response. It's going to save you time finding the documentation, writing the actual text. So it will speed up a lot of HR functions and benefit functions simply as a tool to enhance the current folks that are already there. As that's happening, it helps train that AI model, right? Because it's learning what your responses are like, what you consider a good response, what you consider not good enough, what your style is, and how you talk about your employees. Some companies use the word associates, some companies use the word employees, for example. So these are all things that need to be trained. The second piece of this is actually using it with employees and probably dependents and giving them direct access. And so we're actually developing both of these concurrently. And I'll let Kate talk a little bit about Airbo AI.
Cool. And so, as Vlad just hinted at, we're setting it up to be a really safe and easy way for you to get comfortable with AI before it gets released to your employees. And so, Vlad, if you go to the next slide, you are all getting access to a waitlist to join this. So you should see in the chat a link that just came up. If you are interested in this early access, feel free to pop your information into the chat or into that link. But essentially, the HR version is called Airbo AI HR Assistant. And it is going to be, as you can see, a new tab on Airbo called Airbo AI, where if you go to this tab, you can ask a question and it is going to respond back based on all of your documentation. So in the setup, what we'll do is we're going to put in your benefit guide, we'll put in any summaries, we might put in your handbook or your policies. So any information that you would like loaded into the back end, we'd load it in. And then you would just come in here, ask the question. You can make sure the response looks good. Again, like we're training that AI for you. And then you can just copy paste and send it off to your employee. And so the idea is it will make things more efficient for you in getting responses to employees. And it's also giving you a way to test it out before we get it to your employee population.
So Airbo AI, the HR assistant, is being made completely free for 2024. And we will be letting people into it based on the order in which people sign up onto the wait list. So if you'd like to sign up for this, please go ahead and click the link in the chat, fill out the form, submit, and you'll be on the list.
And we'll probably be touching base in a few weeks on next steps. So the next version that we're working on is Airbo AI for employees. And so this is the ability for employees to ask a question via text and receive a response back. It's kind of in the same manner based on your documentation. So it'll be specific for your company's documentation, your company's benefits, your wellness programs, all of that. It's going to be a pretty easy setup. So you load those documents into Airbo. And then it will teach an employee how they would ask a question. So in this case, we would teach them what phone number to send the text message to. They would then start using it. They could send their texts and they would receive the immediate response, exactly like the demo that you saw earlier on the phone and you see in this little GIF here. And so this one, again, as Vlad mentioned, we want it to be released to HR first, but we are going to be releasing this for employees as well. And this will be an additional cost that will be an upgrade or an add-on to Airbo.
Yeah, so Airbo for HR is free.
Yep.
It'll give you an ability to experiment, to use it, to train it. Airbo for employees will be an additional cost. And it's something that we are rolling out to our customers starting March 31st, or I guess April 1st.
Yep.
I like to say March 31st because April 1st is April Fools. I don't feel like that's, people might
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. I'm like very early Q2
Yeah.
because I didn't want to, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be bringing companies on board with this. Perfect.
Cool. I think next is our Q&A, right?
Q&A time.
Perfect.
All right. We've got a lot of questions.
I know. I love this.
All right. I'm going to recruit Evelyn to help us get through some of these and answer questions as we go through. But we can kind of get in there. Kimberly asked, this I think is an interesting one. Employees always feel like Big Brother is watching them. How do you communicate to them that the powers will keep this a safe space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in kind of similar to how we do like communications about like EAPs now and education about tools like this. It would just be in the communication and like the kind of launch and promotion of these tools that, hey, this is a safe space for you. This is like a place where you can ask a question and it's not going to come back back on you. So yeah, it's really simply like in the how you present it to employees. And for groups that are going to be rolling this out to their employees, we'll be helping you with all of that. So like you'll have customer success support about how we want to present it to employees.
Yeah. I'll take this one. Alexander asked, is Airbo AI powered by ChatGPT or is it just modeled like ChatGPT? Will it help employees choose which benefits are best for them? So the versions you're seeing are powered by ChatGPT with a bunch of prompt engineering and a bunch of training. The models are changing. Like this, like stuff is developing pretty quickly about what's best. So we're not committed to ChatGPT necessarily forever, but this is like a good model right now. And you kind of take the model and then you train it. So it's almost like you can think of it if ChatGPT is this like very general model. It's really ChatGPT for HR. So we're training it on HR specific information and benefit specific information to make it really amazing at answering questions like an expert in benefits would. The second part of the question is, will it help employees choose which benefits are best for them? Yes, eventually it will. We're thinking about this as in phases, and I'll actually knock out a couple of questions here, which is there's a few questions that kind of actually Teresa asked this. Can it understand and communicate details such as when the HSA monies are in their account for the first time, such as the first of the month after their benefits start? So yes, it can communicate those kinds of details. But it's a little bit different from accessing that data. So calling on that data and presenting employee specific information. So if you think about like phase one being that conversational interface, giving really good responses on more general information that would normally be in PDFs, documents, microsites, etc. That's like phase one. Phase two is it will get more personalized. So it will be able to talk to other systems to get real-time information on how much money they have in the HSA and things of that nature. And then phase three will actually be like transactions. So being able to actually make changes to those systems directly from a conversational interface.
I've seen a couple just on, is Airbo AI customized to specific employers' offerings or is it more generic? So our Airbo AI will be for your specific offerings. So everything that's responding back to an employee about their benefits will be your company benefits. I think we had a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah, and like again, it's sort of like a layered cake, right? Like there is some general stuff that every company needs. Like not every company doesn't need to redefine what a copay is. So that's defaults that are coming in. And then there's the more specific company specific cultural and benefits information and eventually more broad HR information. And that will be what is specific to the company. And actually this links nicely to Shali Anderson's question, which is some folks are afraid that AI will gain access to internal data that we wouldn't want to share broadly. How can that be avoided? So a lot of folks have asked that question, and it's a really good one. We asked that question, top of the list for us too. So up until this point, up until very recently, actually, almost anything you put in, say, AI would be then used to train the broader AI model. And of course, companies were like, if we're going to use this internally as a work tool, we can't give away our proprietary information to, an AI agent. And so it's split up essentially. It's much like Salesforce or any other software that you use that keeps data private to the organization, but uses the underlying technology to power the experience that the user eventually has. Same exact thing. There's kind of like security blocks built around, gates built around the data so that it's not maliciously used. And that is like one really important thing about even with ChatGPT, there's your personal version that you can go in and use ChatGPT, or you upgrade and you pay like $20 a month for the enterprise version of ChatGPT. One of those features is that they will not use your data they will containerize your data and not use it for in like training purposes. So this is something that the industry has thought of and is being pretty aggressive about.
I
Was
think
your
we
com
answered.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead. I was
Yeah,
just
was
gonna
your
say, I think we answered Sharon Tucker's question about drilling down
yeah.
each person's. Okay, because that's going to be just a future version. I'll let
Was
you
your
take the next
company
one. Sorry,
developed
Colleen.
for benefits, human resources, and AI has now improved that? I'll ask that. Yeah, actually, it's funny because Airbo AI is in the name of the company. Um, accidental, but we'll ride that one. So we actually started as a text message based wellness game, like years and years ago, like over 10 years ago. And what we do today is benefits education, well-being education via a interactive system that kind of feels like Instagram stories. And we've moved into AI. It's kind of a funny loop back to our mission originally, which was a conversational interface about wellness. So when we saw this developing, we're like, oh my God, like we've seen this story. The technology just wasn't there yet. And we had the opportunity to be able to jump in here and kind of get back to what we originally started with, which is really exciting.
It's a really full circle moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
13-year overnight moment. No,
Sometimes it takes a while.
yeah. Is it the HR department that tells the AI the answer if it is not something that can be found by looking through documents? Yes, exactly. So if it's that's where the continuous improvement comes in, and that's actually one of the things that we're currently working on, like documenting implementation steps, and making sure that the documentation is being provided is thorough and it's just like a checklist item. And when there are gaps, a way to update the with additional information. And this would be a normal process. I think it's not going to be too unusual. Let's see. Oh, okay. This is actually a good one. Laurel asked, if my payroll system is our tool to manage benefits, how does this apply? So the bright red line we talked about at Airbo a lot is transactions versus not transactions. A lot of the security gates that need to be built in that a lot of software uses, like payroll software, is because you have to make transactions on it, and those are very serious transactions that can have, really huge consequences for people if they're hacked or go awry. So the first version of AI, you can kind of think of it from a like, what job does it do? The job that it does is very similar to an intranet site or a microsite or a benefits guide. It's just that plus a person to explain what's in the documentation, that we turn that into an AI experience. So we're not doing transactions, we're not doing recall of employee-specific information, which requires higher levels of security and integration and makes these implementations much heavier duty. We're doing a very simple version of this. And so essentially the answer is there is no impact. It can work with any technology infrastructure. And when there is something that they need to go into your payroll system or BenAdmin or HRIS to do something, it then can redirect them to it and give them a link or instructions for how to access that particular page. Ooh, Mary had a juicy one. What about the potential loss of jobs and the lack of human contact? Is that seen as a negative side effect of AI? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a inevitable outcome here is that a bunch of jobs are going to fundamentally change. And I'll just share how I think about this. On the one hand, we're going to probably see a bunch of jobs that used to be done at a very like low level of like answering questions. Actually, we have a customer that we were talking to, and Kate actually alluded to this customer earlier. where they set up an outsourced call center. A lot of questions were still ricocheting back to the HR manager. We asked, what % of your job is answering these questions? She was like, oh my God, all the time. And I'm like, okay, but like as a percentage. She said 25%. Okay. 25% of her day is being taken up by answering employee questions. And then she said, but it's not just that I'm answering 25% of the time, it's that that is broken up throughout the day over and over again. I'm constantly interrupted. I can't get any of my strategic work done. I have to do that on nights and weekends. I'm running around trying to help people when they're in trouble. And I think that might be the biggest thing that we see change in the immediate future. It's that people whose fraction, like a fraction of their time is spent on answering questions and doing this kind of work, they actually have the time to go do the more strategic things that are much more fulfilling. I think that's a very positive case.
Exactly.
But I also think that there will be some jobs are going to go away, and anyone who says that they won't are is being dishonest. Like we see it firsthand in how we use it. And then some new jobs will be created. And this is always happens with technological transformation, be it manufacturing automation or the internet boom that we've gone through. There are always some jobs that are lost and always some jobs that are created. And we're going to be seeing that. There's no way around it. That's part of the message that I'm trying to send here in a really blunt way is I encourage everybody here to get front and center on it and push it forward, because the folks that will be most critical to the future economy are the ones that understand this stuff really, really well and are seeing the leaders in it.
Hey, Vlad, we have about 1 minute left, so we need to pull our prize winner from everyone that answered questions. So Evelyn, we're going to do that. I think Vlad and I can stay on to answer some other questions. I know there's been a number about getting a transcript of or at least like the common questions answered. So I for sure want to answer that one right after we do our prize winner.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Happy to
Cool.
jump in quickly. So yeah, we had a bunch of questions, which was amazing. And I pulled our winner, which is Reagan Carmen. So I'm going to reach out via email for your gift card. Also, everyone who has to jump, I'm going to be sharing, or we're going to be sharing a quick survey. We'd love to hear from you on how we can improve these webinars. We're going to be doing more. So definitely let us know how we can improve, and excited to see you at the next one. But I'm going to pass it back to Kate and Vlad to keep answering some questions.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Vlad, so we've had quite a few questions on asking if the HR team gets a log of the questions that will be asked, so they can better understand like what keeps coming through. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you for that one.
Yeah. So this one we're working on figuring out, frankly, how to best do this. In theory, you anonymize the person that's asking the question, and you show the question, and you're good to go. In practice, you don't always know exactly the nature of what they've typed in. And so one of the reasons we want to be in the driver's seat of doing this is we feel very strongly that there are responsible ways to build this technology, and then there's like really irresponsible ways to build this technology. And the difference tends to be, do you have experience and benefits and seeing things go horribly awry once in a while? And that tends to be enough to scare us. So right now, no, we're not going to let those questions be easily seen. But the good news is with AI, it's very easy to summarize information in a way that makes it non-identifiable. And so that is something that we'll be doing, which is figuring out a way to display information back to the HR user that explains what's missing, right? What holes need to be plugged. And there are ways to do that without disclosing the specifics of the question or who asked it.
That answered a few of them. Let's see here. We have a good one. How does it handle a company that offers different benefits to employees at different locations? Because that's incredibly common.
Yeah, and actually the first version that we're building handles this case. So, I mean, frankly, the easiest way is you in the prompt engineering, and when I say prompt engineering, it's basically like code, but it's written as natural language. And John, whose beautiful wedding shot you see on screen here next to us, it's at that wedding, is actually the head of product for us and does a lot of our prompt engineering. Um, the prompt engineering is uh, uh, written in such a way to. And Kate, actually, I lost the thread a little bit. Can you re-ask that last part?
Yeah, how will it handle a company that offers different benefits to employees
Right.
at different locations?
So you can actually get the AI to just ask, where are you? Like what location are you in? And then it can pull the correct information based on that information. And you can ask a few questions if you want to make the information more specific without having to do an eligibility file, without having to do a bunch of additional stuff. We also have the ability to do the eligibility file piece where we can recognize who the person is who's asking the question and what characteristics apply to that person so that we can provide an answer to them based on those characteristics. It's almost like so many questions that finding the questions is like its own thing.
I know. We've had a few questions that are on specific topics like reference-based pricing plans. And so I like it, basically the question is asking, is it trained or can it be trained on reference-based pricing plans? And it absolutely can. So it's a matter of just loading those documents in and then training it essentially to respond back. So yes, and like I know we got that question on 403Bs and a few others. So it absolutely can answer questions if you have like slightly different benefits than the quote unquote norm.
Laurel asked, if I'm actively using Airbo today, how will this change our employee experience?
Well, so if you want to use the Airbo HR Assistant, so again, that's that free one that we popped the link into the chat to sign up for. That will just be a new tab on Airbo that you'll get access to once it's released, where you can come in and ask questions to answer for employees.
But employees won't see anything in that case. That's just
exactly, yeah. That is just for HR. For employees, once it's released, they can either text in their question. So we'll do education for them on how to ask a question.
Okay, sorry. I want to interject. Just to be clear, you don't automatically have Airbo AI. You have to opt into it.
Yep.
So the short answer is your experience doesn't change at all unless you want it to. But if you want it to, then what Kate is about to say applies.
Yeah. And then if you decide to upgrade your plan to the Airbo AI for employees, the first version will be via text message. So an employee will be able to ask a question via text message. In a future version, they will be able to ask questions on Airbo. And so that would change their experience. That's not released yet, but that will be a future version that's coming out.
Yeah. Mary asked, this is amazing. Does it have a response if it does not know the answer or the question does not relate to benefits or is irrelevant? This was actually something we have to do a lot of testing around. Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, part of the prompt engineering that we do is figuring out the outlines around what we want to be the surface area of things that we will answer. And so, for example, if you go to ChatGPT and you ask a general question, like, give me dating advice, it will give you dating advice. Our version will not do that. So keeping it kind of work appropriate and context appropriate is a piece of what we provide.
Yep.
Denise had an interesting question. Any thoughts on the age demographics and how using AI will impact these end users? What do you think about that, Kate?
You know, I actually think it is going to be easier across the board for a lot of generations because most people these days have smartphones, whether you're, in your 50s, 60s, or you're in your 20s. And so people are very used to text message capabilities, and it's really just using that. And so it's essentially just an employee almost texting back and forth with contact in their phone. And so I actually think it's going to be easier because from my experience with specifically some of our like older, more technologically challenged populations, navigating the HRIS and Ben admin sites, that's where it gets really challenging for them because they didn't grow up with computers. And so like navigating those sites is really challenging, where this is actually going to like strip that layer away and they can just ask a question and get an immediate response. And so it actually should make it quite a bit easier for like the full population, like all demographics, to get information, which I think is huge because I know that's a challenge like a lot of our groups run into.
We had two back-to-back questions that touch on the same kind of topic, and I think maybe these are the last two that we'll do. Will there be any reporting available, like employee usage, hot topics, and is there a way to track trends and top issues for employee questions to ask? I sort of started addressing this earlier, and I think this is one of the really fun opportunities from the kind of reporting that we've already designed, is that when we think about benefits education, proactive benefits education, which is our core product up until this point, we're trying to head off issues that then eventually happen. We think about that as like outbound education. And I think AI is really good at catching the inbound issues, right? The problem has already happened. Someone's going through something. They need help now. So one of the really fun things that this is going to enable is you are seeing the things that are happening over and over again through the AI piece, the chat piece, and then that you're able to use that data to then inform your education strategy on what campaigns you want to run in order to decrease the number of people that are confused about something or increase appreciation or utilization of certain benefits.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know there was a number that we didn't get through, so we'll get a list of these. And so we'll reach out separately and touch base on some of these questions that we weren't able to answer live. So expect some like direct outreach from us on that front.
Perfect. Well, last time I messed up our exit and tried to jump the gun. Is there anything that we're missing that we were supposed to do at the end?
I do not think so. Just remember to do that survey that is going to be sent out shortly because we always want feedback about how we can make things better. And so that should be in your inboxes, I think, in the next, let's say, 30 minutes, Evelyn?
Yeah, that's a good estimate.
Cool. Perfect.
Well,
Awesome.
this was fun. Kate,
Thank you,
as
everybody.
always. Thank you everyone who attended today and taking the time to hang out with us and staying on for a little longer. We hope this was useful.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, anything else that comes up, please feel free to ping us, and we'll make sure to follow up with any Q&As that we didn't get to answer live. Have a wonderful, magical rest of your Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.